Hello and welcome back, or welcome to the channel. Today I have a little, reading vlog. I did a really bad job of introducing the books as I was reading them, so I thought I would pop in here, do a proper intro, and then get to the vlog portion. The books that I read in this vlog were part of the buzzword and buzz image challenges that were developed by Books and Lala, or Kayla, I think is her real name. But yeah, it was developed by her. I'll leave a link below. Otherwise I'll pop my selections for each month up on screen. I've already read some of these books. I'm also reading them pretty much out of order for the months listed, just because I'm borrowing most of the books from the library. So I have to wait until they're available, and I'm kind of like jumping around the list, just depending on availability. So as part of the buzzword challenge for this video, I read Women in Science, which matches up with the buzzword prompt of keys on a keyboard. So I picked Women in Science because it has the colon in the title. The whole full title is Women in Science, 50 fearless pioneers who changed the world. I'm reading off my screen. I think technically this is a kid's book, but I have had it on my TBR because I want to learn more about women in science. Sorry if you can hear my dog pitter-pattering around. What? Where was I? Women in Science, I think, is a kid's book, but I read it because I wanted to learn more about women in science. I think Hannah Witten posted that she read this to her child in a video years ago and has been on my TBR since then. I will get into the reviews and ratings at the end of the video. I will look exactly the same because I'm filming it on the same day, but they'll be at the end, as well as I rate them right after I finish reading them as well. Just sort of see how my thoughts change over the weeks after I've read the books and I've had time to think about them. The second book that I read was for the March buzzword, which is This or That, and I read This Is How You Lose the Time War, and it's basically about two agents of the Time War that are on opposite sides, but they form a relationship through leaving letters for each other throughout time, which, yeah, is an interesting premise. April's buzzword is ordinal numbers, so I picked Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. Basically follows these two women who have an online relationship and sort of follows their journey. It gets a bit dark and twisted. And then the last buzzword book that I read was for November, and this is a directional buzzword, or an instructional title. So I picked Doing It, Let's Talk About Sex by Hannah Witten. Hannah Witten gets mentioned a lot in this video. I just have a lot of books on my TBR back from when she used to do a lot of
reading videos, so she does get a shout out a lot. I actually did buy this. This is one of the books that I bought because I was impatient and I thought I've wanted to own it for a long time anyway, so I just bit the bullet. I did think this would have more research related stuff in it just because of the kind of videos she used to make when she was writing this book, but it is more so personal anecdotes and experiences mixed in with life lessons about sex and relationships. The only book that I read for the picture related buzz reading challenge was I Fear My Pain Interests You, and I read this as part of the April prompt, which was a book cover featuring accessories and there's a little bracelet, so I picked this one. Again, been on my TBR for a while. This was sort of a good challenge to do to get through some of the books that have been on my TBR for years. All of my ratings and final thoughts will be at the end of the video, and yeah, you'll see me at the end talking shit about books. Okay, so you have to ignore the rash on my face. I have had it for a long time, and I don't think it's going away. But the first book I'm reading is Women in Science, and technically it's a kid's book, but I have had it on my TBR since Hannah Witten talked about it, and she said it was actually a really good book for her to read as well as an adult. So I'm excited to learn about women in science. Okay, so I'm halfway through Women in Science, and I have to say it is very inspiring to see women sort of go against the grain, if you will, especially back in like the 1800s. Like, I'm not taking my education for granted because these women have sort of had to fight for this level of education that I have currently. So very grateful to these women. It's really cool to see their passion and curiosity lead to new inventions and new ways of understanding the world, pretty much. It has some quotes that are really awesome. The pages sort of look like this, so they're very artistic, obviously. Again, I think this is for children, but it has quotes from some of the women in this book, which I think is really cool. And there's one that I especially liked. Yeah, I really liked this. When you have that joy, you do the right experiments, you let the material tell you where to go, and it tells you at every step what the next has to be. And I just thought it's really cool to have that connection with your work. I'm calling it work. These women were hardly getting paid for these roles. So again, you'll have to excuse the splotchiness. I just got out of the shower. But hello. I finished reading Women in Science last night, and it has fallen down to like a 3-star rating just because I went to log it on Goodreads and a heap of people were like, hey, there's inaccuracies in this, in the history of some of these women. So that brought the rating down. But otherwise, very inspiring book. I would actually, same as Hannah Witten when she reviewed it, I would recommend it to adult women that just want to learn more about women, or adult people that want to learn more about women in science. Because I did learn a bit, but again, it is debatable whether it's historically accurate. And then next up, I'm going to be reading Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who recommended this to me or if I like found it through a YouTuber or something. Sadomasochism, obsession, death, a whirlpool of darkness churns at the heart of a macabre ballet between two lovely young women in an internet chat room in the early 2000s. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this one. I might DNF it if it gets a bit too crazy. I don't necessarily want to read something light all the time, but like I also don't know if I'm in the right place to read this right now. So, oh, okay. I just saw. I'm not gonna dox my library, but this is tagged as a horror. So now I'm actually keen to get into it. Okay, I just opened the book and I forgot to read the last line on the blurb that's kind of spooked me a bit. It says, "What have you done today to deserve your eyes?" So, yeah, I opened the book and that's the name of part 2. Okay, so here's the thing with this book. It's a very, how do I say, like BDSM, lesbian kind of relationship going on. And I don't know how I feel about that being written by a man. Especially if this goes south, which I assume it will. Just feels a bit yuck. Okay, I have finished Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. And what the fuck was this? What was this? I feel like it's done what it was intended to do. And like for that, it's good because it did freak me out and it made me cringe a lot. Like it was a very cringe-worthy book. But it sort of had to be. If you've read this book, you know, I'm basically trying to do like no spoilers throughout this whole thing. Sick and twisted, and actually made me feel sick at one point. Yeah, still don't like that it's written by a man because it's about a twisted lesbian relationship. I have very mixed feelings on this. I'm sure it'll take me a couple days to like actually get my thoughts together. I don't even know what I'm going to rate this, to be honest. Tentatively, it's getting two stars. I wish I could do 1.5 on Goodreads, but I don't think I can.
So I'm gonna give it 2. Okay, you'll have to excuse the sound of the dryer, but next I'm gonna be reading Doing It by Hannah Witten. She is getting a lot of mentions in this video, I think just because I used to watch her like book review videos a lot, and I've actually been watching her on YouTube for probably like 10 years or something, which is crazy to think about. So I actually haven't read any of her books, so I'm excited to read this. However, I am expecting some of the research to be out of date and updated from this book because it was written like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 9 years ago this book was written. So I imagine there's a lot of different research out there now. I think she has like proper research in here, or maybe it's more about personal experience. I actually don't know, but I am very keen to finally read one of her books because it's been on my TBR for so long. It seems like it's easy to read. Hopefully I can sort of whiz through it before the end of the week. Okay, so it's been a couple days. Life did its thing and I had a flare up of health problems. So I finally finished reading Doing It. I ended up giving this 3 stars, which is very surprising because I was loving this to begin with. I think it just it did get a bit repetitive, and it also has a lot of very dated references in it, which isn't like the worst thing in the world. It's bound to happen when you write a book like this. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more research in this too. I know that Hannah likes looking at like the history and research around sex, and there wasn't a lot of that. It was a very normalizing odd things you might go through by telling her own stories, which was nice. I think I really would have appreciated this when I was younger, maybe like a teenager, young adult, like early 20s. This would have been really good. It is a new day and it's the day before hair wash day, so you have to be kind to me and my greasy hair. But I'm about to start reading This Is How You Lose the Time War. And I have had so many friends talk about how good this book is and they keep urging me to read it. I'm a bit hesitant about it just because I know there's some dark themes in it. I also don't really know what the book is about. And I feel like that's kind of how I've gone into every book in this video, but I kind of like that because I can just go with the flow and figure things out on my own as opposed to reading the blurb and having to expectations for what it's going to feel like. Okay, I'm maybe 30 pages in and I know what's going on. I do know what's going on now, but I was very confused at the start of the book. It basically just chucks you straight into all this time loop, time jump, time travel talk, and it was confusing to start with, but 30 pages in, I can confirm I love the writing style and the way that the chapters are set out. So yeah, enjoying it so far. Okay, I am halfway through, or a bit over halfway through This Is How You Lose the Time War, and the same thing still stands where the writing's really pretty in the letters between red and blue, but I don't understand all of the lore, and I wish I did. I don't know if it's because I'm reading when I'm out and about and I'm not focused enough, or whether it's just not explained to add mystery to the book. Not too bad. I think it's a fairly easy read. It's nice and short. I actually wonder if I will finish this today because I'm going to go read by the water. So see if I finish it, see if my thoughts change in the last half. Okay, I finished This Is How You Lose a Time War a couple days ago, but I haven't had the energy to film. So I'm reviewing it now very quickly. I actually ended up giving it 1 star, which might shock some of you and will definitely shock my friends that recommended this book. I'm so sorry, guys. I kind of thought it was supposed to be a bit more sci-fi kind of vibe, but it was a bit too woo-woo for me in a way. It kept being oh, a red left a letter in a ring of trees, and it's okay, but how did she do that? How did she do it? I really want to know everything, and they didn't explain a single thing in this book. I also didn't cry. I know a lot of people cry at this book, and I didn't. Next up, I'm reading I fear my pain interests you. I did have a peek at some reviews because I don't really know what this book is about, and everyone was like, this book sucks. I read a little bit of the blurb, which I'm not really keen on. It's almost like she was trying to write my year of rest and relaxation. Are you good? Okay, I'm about a quarter of the way in to I Fear My Pain Interests You, and honestly, not as bad as I thought it would be. The current day dialogue is a bit boring and like too edgy kind of, and then there's like a little bit at the start of the book that's like that too, but once you sort of get used to that, it almost seems like the author found her groove sort of after the first like 3 chapters. Interested to see what the next like 45 pages will be like, because the first 45 are better than I expected, but also still kind of bad. Okay, I have finished I Fear My Pain Interests You, and I regret to inform everyone this is another 1-star read. I think I added a lot of these books to my TBR when I was like 21. My reading tastes have changed and like my perspective on a lot of things have changed. Yeah, not a fan of how pain is dealt with in this one, and not a fan of a lot of the relationships that are depicted, just because I don't think that they're particularly realistic, especially the relationship that she has at the end of the book, or like towards the end of the book. Not great, not realistic, bit strange. An odd read, but not a good odd read. Okay, we're back. Exactly where I was in the intro. First of all, I'm going to rate and talk about these books a little bit more. So the first book that I read was Women in Science. I did enjoy this book. I found it really fun. It did get a bit repetitive at some points. The last sentence in each like mini biography was always like supposed to be super inspiring, but it got really repetitive really quickly. But aside from that, I thought it was cute. The illustrations are nice. I thought it was just a really nice, it was nice. It was a really enjoyable read for me because I read about a lot of women that I haven't heard about before, but I definitely should have. So it was really nice in that regard. However, I did read some reviews after I finished it, and there is a bit of contention. Some people think the history and some parts of this book aren't completely accurate, and the author's sources are quite limited. So for that reason, it sits at like a 3-star review for me personally, because while I enjoyed it, I also recognize that maybe there are some issues with sourcing and just logistical history stuff. Otherwise, really approachable to read. The format was great for someone who didn't want to read something super heavy. Yeah, it was just nice to have something that was educational, but because it's supposed to be for children, it was really easily, like, it was a very approachable book. So if you want to learn more about women in science, but you don't want all the crazy in-depth science talk that can be quite confronting, this actually is a pretty good read, even for an adult. Okay, next up is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. And this one I had mixed thoughts about, because I understand that this book is supposed to be graphic and scary and eerie and like make your skin crawl a little bit. It had the intended effect on me where I was like, what the hell am I reading? However, it depicts a queer sapphic relationship, and as it's quite dark, I don't like the fact that it's written by a man. I don't know how else to phrase that. I might actually read some reviews that I came across, because I think in the video I said I was sort of flip-flopping between 1 and 2 stars. It's definitely moved down to a 1 star after a bit of reflection on how this book was written and why did it have to be a sapphic relationship written by a man. Okay, I'm reading off my screen, so bear with me. Someone said, reads like a middle schooler trying their absolute hardest to be edgy and spook their classmates. I'm glad it's so short, because goddamn did I not want to have to endure another second of this piece of shit. Characters have no depth and are exactly the same as one another, which is so painful to read through emails. Literally just sounds like the same person talking to themselves for 60 pages.
which would honestly be more realistic than falling for someone after, what, 4 emails? Stop writing bad trauma porn about lesbians. And that basically sums it up for me as well. This is a very hot take too. I remember bringing this up in book club once and someone was like, what, so only queer people can write about queer relationships? No. When a person of the opposite sex writes about a queer relationship that involves the opposite sex, it feels gross when it includes a lot of trauma, especially in the case of things have gotten worse since we last spoke. It could have been 2 men. And I know that I'm pretty sure the author of this book is a gay man. Why is he writing about lesbians? Anyway, it's a bit complex and there's a lot of nuance and stuff, but it just felt gross in this instance. After reading that diabolical book, I read Doing It by Hannah Witten, and I gave it 3 stars. Now, the reason I gave it 3 stars is because I do think this would have been very valuable when I was a late teenager, early adult, like 19 to 21, maybe even younger, maybe like 17 to 21, that doesn't matter, but I do think this would have been very helpful, especially as someone who grew up Catholic. The reason it sort of got a bit of a lower rating is that a lot of the language is quite dated. There's a lot of references to Harry Potter, which haven't aged very well. Hannah, I love you. I know you didn't do that on purpose. Obviously, we didn't know what would happen with J.K. Rowling. Yeah, I think Hannah came out with a video recently where she was talking about the books that she's written, and she was like, I don't like doing it. I will never read it again. Like something like that. Because she understands that she wrote this at a certain time of her life, and she would write it completely differently if she wrote it again. And that's fine. Like, the core messages in this are still helpful. Some of it was a little bit cringe, and that's okay, because at the time, these references and these jokes and everything would have been like spot on. So I'm not going to hold that over her head, but I did give her 3 stars. Otherwise, like, not harmful, no issues with it. Presented very approachable way to think and talk about sex, especially for young people. I think this is a fantastic book. You'll have to excuse any banging if you can hear it, because I'm pretty sure the neighbours just got a basketball. Next up I read This Is How You Lose the Time War. Again, this had been on my TBR for a long time, and I was very excited to read it because I had a lot of friends that loved this book. They talked about how upsetting it is, and they cried and all that stuff. And I just didn't have that kind of reaction to this book. I feel like if you're going to do something like this that has a lot of lore that should be behind it and it's not explained, there were times where I just like didn't compute what was going on. And that might be a me issue, but I think this could have had a bit more depth to it in terms of like world building and like especially regarding how the characters were leaving notes for each other. Like, for example, one of them's like, oh, she left me a letter in the rings of the tree, and you know, it was written really beautifully, that section, but I'm nosy and I want to know exactly how she did that. And they didn't do that in this book, and that's fine. Like, I just don't think this book was for me. I want to know all the details, I want to know all the lore, and you just don't get it in this book, but you do get a really beautiful sapphic relationship. The last book I read, I also had issues with, and that was I Fear My Pain Interests You. This book follows a woman who doesn't experience pain. Like, she doesn't perceive pain. So she has a couple of accidents, injuries throughout this book that lead her to certain situations, and everyone's like, oh my god, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, look at your leg, and it's like broken. Interesting premise. Just hate the book. While it could have been very interesting, I think it focused too much on her relationship to men. I feel like they were trying to pull my year of rest and relaxation, and it just came off whiny and privileged and didn't have a lot of commentary on anything. I don't know, as someone who has a pain disorder, like in the different direction where I feel too much of it, this could have been really interesting. And I understand it was a little bit of a metaphor of like her lack of physical pain was due to her like mental health episode that she was going through. But
again, as someone who has mental health problems, I know what it feels like to not be able to feel much and like to feel a bit dull and all that kind of stuff. But it didn't sit well with me the way that it was presented. Maybe I'm just getting more cynical and fussy as I age, and maybe I'm just going to hate every book I read now. But yeah, those were all of my books, all of my ratings. I will continue to do this challenge, and I might vlog it occasionally. Reading books that I don't like makes me want to find one that I do like, so it gets me back into reading. I don't know if that works for everyone, but that's sort of where I'm at, is like, the past couple reads have been like 1 to 3 stars, and it's like, where are my 5s? Where are my 5 stars? I'm currently reading Bunny, and I thought it was gonna be up there, and I'm sort of like a quarter of the way through the book, and it's just like slowly dropping in rating for me. So that's a bit disappointing as well. Maybe I'll talk about that eventually too. Or do like a reading check-in in June, or one at the end of the year. I don't know. But if you want to see more reading videos, I also do gaming videos. I kind of just come on here and do whatever I want once a week. So if you're interested in more of like a chill vibe, something to chuck on the TV while you're like cleaning the house and shit, feel free to subscribe. If you liked me complaining about books, feel free to like the video. If I hated your favorite book, feel free to comment and tell me why I'm wrong. That is all. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week.